I think it's pretty safe to say that the future of the Star Wars franchise seems to be quite expansive, not just with their books, novels, comics, and video games, but also let's not forget about their live-action and animated Star Wars TV shows to arrive on Disney+, as well as the new Star Wars trilogy of films by Disney and Lucasfilm. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel for future Star Wars content. Now, the one thing about Disney Star Wars is that we do know that they are now in a phase of desperation and damage control to really get the ball rolling again with this franchise. Essentially, what both Bob Iger and Bob Chaypek want to do for the new Star Wars universe is that they actually really want to bring it on the same exact level as the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, looking and examining and just analyzing at the Rise of Skywalker in general is that we do know that this movie had a lot of trouble behind the scenes. This was primarily because of Kathleen Kennedy getting involved with a lot of the reshoots and the rewrites that took place both in 2018 and 2019 as well. So there were two phases of reshoots and rewrites that really ultimately changed this movie drastically. I mean, originally they were supposed to do 2 parts for The Rise of Skywalker. That was actually being tossed around over at Lucasfilm before Kathleen Kennedy denied that idea and did not want that to happen. Honestly, I mean, ultimately looking at what really happened, with the global crisis, it wouldn't have really worked out for 2020. But at the very minimum, they could have really released Part 2 in 2021 if in any scenario. But I digress. What's really intriguing all has to do with one of the original endings of The Rise of Skywalker by, of course, Disney and Lucasfilm, J.J. Abrams, and even George Lucas. So that, of course, what's really intriguing is that now that both Disney and Lucasfilm are finished with The Rise of Skywalker, they are currently on their new Star Wars trilogy of films, as well as their new Star Wars universe in general. It's explained that even though The Rise of Skywalker was a very messy production and quite difficult for the cast and crew, Disney went through multiple endings for The Rise of Skywalker that were, of course, cancelled by Lucasfilm's Kathleen Kennedy, one of which originally involved Rey on the ground to get back up, giving her energy from the netherworld of the Force, where Anakin Skywalker would help her get up, with the other Force ghosts being seen visually helping Rey. It's explained that J.J. Abrams and George Lucas worked on this version of the ending, where Kylo Ren would not have turned to the light until the very end of the film, near the final frames of the movie where he sacrifices himself, allowing Rey to stab him to let out the spirit of Emperor Palpatine from his body, after Palpatine's old body was destroyed earlier. So that's one of the major differences, is that in this version of The Rise of Skywalker, Kylo wouldn't have turned until the very end of the movie, and it would have had nothing to do with Han Solo. It would have had more so to do with Rey's actions and letting out the spirit of Emperor Palpatine after his body was destroyed, and that spirit entered Kylo Ren's. Now, the spirit of Sidious would then escape and confront Rey and the Force Ghosts, with Ben Solo now turned to the light, dying on the ground, where Luke, Anakin, Qui-Gon Jinn, Mace Windu, Kenobi, Yoda, and others would drag Palpatine's spirit into the netherworld of the Force. Again, this is an idea taken directly from Star Wars Dark Empire 2, I believe, or it might have been 3, where one of the Jedi actually takes Palpatine's spirit into the netherworld as he dies. Now, Anakin would be the primary Force ghost to grab Palpatine's spirit and shrinking his spirit in between his hands by inserting it into the netherworld of the Force, as the Force ghost would vanish. So once again, this is loosely based off of the Dark Empire comics and Palpatine's third death in the Star Wars Legends material. Now, the tables would have been turned on this scene in comparison to the current cut of The Rise of Skywalker, where Rey crawls over to a wounded Ben Solo and uses her healing ability and saves Ben just in time, with Ben and Rey living happily ever after, just like a fairy tale by Disney, just as, of course, J.J. Abrams originally wanted to do, with the two characters then living on Tatooine. Now, that's what's really interesting to me the most, is that J.J. Abrams really wanted Ben Solo to survive. Essentially what J.J. wanted is that he wanted the Skywalker saga to continue, or at least, at the very minimum, he wanted to be the guy that could leave the gates open to somebody else if they ever do need that type of insurance, right? If Disney ever needs that insurance to go back to the Skywalker saga, they could have done that if they left Ben Solo alive. Now we're left with just Rey Skywalker, which, of course, George, John, and Dave are trying to really turn that into the fact that she's an actual Skywalker by having Ben Solo's spirit combined with her actual body. Now, that being said, this version sounds like it's more in line with Star Wars, giving the Force Ghosts the limelight that they deserve. We're talking about Anakin, Qui-Gon, Kenobi, Yoda, Luke, and others that we all love, right? And Liam Neeson, you know, he actually was able to, you know, come into the studio for Episode 9, provide lines of dialogue, you know, giving Rey some advice as she tries to get up and face Palpatine, all the Force Ghosts, right? This would have been, I think, the ultimate ending for the Skywalker saga, and even having Kylo Ren turning at the very end of the film, even though it would have resulted in less screen time for Ben Solo, I think that in the long run, I think it would have been more satisfactory to the Star Wars fans, because Ben Solo would have lived. It would have also left the gate open for future Star Wars films in the actual Skywalker saga. So, with that being said, guys, you know, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.